ultrasound and everything else. But I'm so excited to have you here tonight because you are one of 5 drummer breast cancer survivors that we've had on the show. And I realized that earlier, and I'm like, it's really cool. We've had, well, there's myself, 2 other women other than yourself, and then also a male breast cancer survivor has been on our show before. And so it's really cool to actually find those of us that have such a deep connection like that, breast cancer and drumming. So it's very cool. What I normally like to do, Janine, is I really like to give everybody some insight on how this all started for you. So if you could you take us back to the date when you found out you had breast cancer? What led up to that so that we can know how you found that?
Saw a small lesion in my right breast. So we did a biopsy and it came back very highly grade suspicious cells. So we sent it out for second pathology reading, and then it had come back definitely positive. So it started from my routine exam to getting a second opinion. And then from there, it just started to spiral into surgery and reconstruction. So that was January of 2016.
Wow, so that's not really that long ago. I mean,
Right.
to me now, obviously, whenever I was diagnosed was almost 10 years ago. So anytime somebody says, is in the last 5 years, to me, that's very recent. And Janine, I need to apologize to our viewers right now. Whenever we use Zoom, we started using Zoom recently, which doesn't engage with the software as well as Skype does. And there's some little tricks you have to do for the audio. So they did not hear our amazing introduction there at the beginning. Okay. All you guys really missed was that Janine did not get blown away in the hurricane.
Yes.
She's fine. It's a nice day up in the New York area where she is. And now we just, like, I missed maybe 4 words before you started talking about your breast cancer journey. So I apologize for that, guys. But yeah, so in 2016, you found that. And so what happened next?
Well, prior to the confirmed diagnosis, I had set up my very first drum lesson. I was so excited to do it. I was finally going to, check a box off the bucket list. So in between, getting second opinions and my drum lesson, and then, going back and forth and trying to figure out what was the right plan, I had to cancel. I called my drum teacher and I said, listen, I've got this diagnosis. They're telling me a year and a half plus for reconstruction. I'm going to call you back as soon as I can. So right then and there, not only was I heartbroken over the diagnosis, but I was also heartbroken over the fact that I was finally going to do this. And now that had to come to a stop as well. So from that point on, it was just full speed ahead. I had double mastectomies. It took the year and a half to do the reconstruction. And finally, then in January of 2018, when I was really starting to feel better and feel like myself, that's when I took my first drum lesson. So I had quite a bit of time prior to getting myself recovered, going through the phases to get to, the fast forward to January of 2018. So it was a long road, really.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so interesting because, I talked to a lot of different breast cancer survivors, and every story is so drastically different. You have some people who, when they find out that they have breast cancer, they have to do their chemo first, and then they have their surgery later. And then there's some of us who have the surgery first, which is what I did, and then the chemo later, or they have radiation, or they are still on, oral chemo, tamoxifen or Herceptin or anything like that. And everybody's story is so drastically different. So I noticed when I read up on I listened to some of your previous interviews and things, that you never spoke about chemo. Did you ever have chemo at all?
I didn't. And that was kind of a 50-50. We wouldn't know if I needed chemo until after surgery when they had done lymph node biopsies. And they did, and they all came back negative. So with that being said, I did not have to have chemo because my cell type was a non-invasive type, and it stayed contained in the duct. So I was really fortunate that it got detected early. So I did not have to do chemotherapy.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah. And that's another thing is people don't realize all the different variations of breast cancer. Right. I mean, it is freaking intense, you guys. I remember when I was diagnosed, I went to the American Cancer Society website, which I still feel is a very good website for you to go to get really down into the nitty gritty. But there's not only different stages, like you hear about the stages, there's different grades. There's different levels. There's like there's like, hey, I'm stage
Right.
2B Roman numeral 4 or whatever. It's like all these, and they all mean something. It means like
Mhm.
it translates to the size, or it translates to the different locations or the size at each
Yes.
location. And then
Mhm.
also there's the whether or not your breast cancer is invasive or not.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
Janine, most of the people I talk to are actually invasive.
Right.
And so having somebody who didn't have invasive breast cancer is new. And most people
Mhm.
that I speak to actually do have invasive and have to have further treatment. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
are you familiar with do you recall what how your breast cancer reacted to hormones? Do you remember if it was like a HER2 positive, ER positive, or anything like that?
First of all, I do know about that, but no, I was never told in the end that scenario, to be perfectly honest. But I did want to say again, mine was caught very, very early. So I was really lucky like that, because had it not been caught early, it could have turned into an invasive cancer. And that just, that opens up a whole nother can of worms. So no, I don't have that answer if it was which way hormone wise it was reactive to.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then that also makes a difference in the
Makes a
further
big
therapies that
difference.
you have and stuff like that as well. Like,
Right.
as you know, I
Right.
was triple negative breast
Yes.
cancer, and so I can't take any oral hormone therapy because my
Hmm.
cancer wouldn't react to hormones, so it
Right.
didn't react to any of that stuff. But most people are like ER positive,
Right.
and that's all the different hormones and stuff
Right.
like that. So wow, you
Right.
are so very lucky. And
Very lucky.
and so you've had additional surgeries and things like that too, right?
I did. So I just wanted to say too that I am the third generation in my family. I saw my grandmother go through it and I saw my aunt go through it. And as crazy as this sounds, it was all three of us in the right breast, the same location, the same cell type. That was just mind-boggling in and of itself. So I have
Wow,
a
that is crazy. Yeah.
it's crazy, and I think to myself, will it ever end, because it just the similarities are unbelievable. So I was familiar with the breast cancer because of my grandmother and my aunt. So I kind of knew what to expect a little bit as we went on through the processes of it. But I did spend the year and a half traveling to New York City, which is about 3 hours from where I live, having my surgeries, reconstructing, and then I got the clean bill of health. I think it was right before 2018, and everything was going great and fine, and I was moving forward and feeling like my old self. And then I wound up having my physical the summer of 2019, and it was time for an MRI because that's what you do after 3 years. You just check everything to make sure it's okay. And I had found out that my implants had ruptured and they had failed, and there was an FDA recall. So I had to go back into the OR and reconstruct and remove the implants and put new ones in and do some revisions. And so I've done reconstruction twice. So I know very well what it's like and what it entails.
My gosh, man, what a
Yeah.
nightmare. It's,
It was a nightmare.
each time I
Yeah.
talk to the different breast cancer survivors, I've found, and this just holds true, that every one of us goes through some kind of
Something.
side problem,
Hmm. Hmm.
whatever it is. With me, it was my lung was punctured by the port installation for
Right.
my chemo, and with you,
Right.
it was this ruptured implant, and then the
Yeah.
recall. I mean, it's like
It's
your brain
crazy.
explodes over that. That is
Yeah,
crazy,
and
man.
April, I have to say, I had a very different reaction to that phone call that I had just gotten the end of last summer to the one that I had gotten in 2016. The first phone call I got, I said, let's just do this. Let's step on the gas and go. I just want to be done and over with it so we can move on with life. And, one, two, three, here we go. When I got the call last summer, I thought, there's just no way. I am not doing it. I am not going back to the OR. I'm not going to reconstruct. I'm not going to have 8 weeks where I basically can't get out of bed and do anything. And so it was very interesting how I went through, both sides of the emotions with it, to be
Yeah,
honest.
just almost like you were just
Yeah,
worn out, really, right?
born.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah, like I could this time I think I was more emotionally involved in it than I was the first time. And you're right. I was just worn out from the first time and I knew what to expect. So that's why I thought, I just don't want to do this. So I asked my surgeon, I said, what's my window? How much time do I have before I have to reconstruct again? And he said, I'm going to give you 6 months. You have to have this done within a 6-month period. So I took it to 5 months and 2 weeks before I walked in the OR to do it.
You're like, what is the last possible moment that I can like survive and do this? Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
And I should have done it earlier, but I literally, I had to process the whole thing. I had to tell myself, we have to go through this again. You have to do this, this is what you need to do. And plus we were traveling too, to get to the city. So yeah, there's a lot of factors to have to add into it. So.
Well, and that's just the thing, Janine, is with every person who goes through breast cancer, it's like, you just have to deal with it on your own and your own terms. You have to make those decisions for yourself and whatever is right for you, not only physically, but emotionally. Sometimes the emotional wins out over the physical. Sometimes the physical wins out over. It's kind of a balancing act. But I'm so glad you got all that taken care of and that you're doing really well now. So how often do you need to go in, like for scans and stuff at this point?
Actually, I'm supposed to go back in the spring because it's kind of like starting to go all over again, like the once a year for the first couple of years, then we kind of start backing it off. But, I'm going to kind of wait and see what's happening with all this virus stuff and traveling to New York City. And, if I'm lucky, I might be able to get my testing done closer to home up here and have everything sent down to New York. But for right now, I'm on track to go back in the spring for my checkups. So.
Gotcha. Very cool. I'm so glad you're staying on top of that. It sounds like a giant hassle. I'm going to stop for a second and let's give a shout out to some of the people who are watching right now. Dieter is very into the conversation. He's got lots of comments. He's just like totally feeling for you and says, wow, that's absolutely a nightmare. But he says, absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So he's showing you some big love right now, Janine. It's very cool. So Dieter, thank you so much for plugging that in there. I want to say hello to Casey, who's out there. I miss you too, girl. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much for being here and everybody who's watching. And again, I invite you guys to post any questions that you might have for Janine while she's here. And I got to remember one thing before we move on to drumming. I was about to jump there. I was like right there. But one thing I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned that your whole family has had this line of breast cancer. Have you guys ever been tested for any of the genes that relate back to breast cancer?
I was tested, April, and actually I came back negative for the BRCA1 and 2. So,
very, very interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And I wonder, I'm in kind of a fortunate situation, I think, when I talk to other people. My doctor is actually involved in research and trials for breast cancer. And so anytime there's the latest testing for any genes or anything like that, she's like, April, come in, let's test you again. Because we really feel that there's some gene in my family as well, because I go back like 6 generations of cancer on my dad's side. And so my dad had prostate cancer and then on back and on back. But we haven't been able to match it up to a gene either. So I've actually been tested for 27 different genes. So they have that many now that they've linked back to breast cancer. But the good news is, if you are the BRCA is the most common, BRCA1, BRCA2. Those make your chances for recurrence and for ovarian cancer much higher. Most of the other genes that I've learned about, the risk factor isn't as high for some of those other cancers. So that's the good news. But I was just going to say, if you're interested, you might check and see if there's more testing they can do for you, and maybe you can hone in on that gene, unless you've already gone to that extreme. You might have already done 27 gene testing like what I've done. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. I remember there was quite a few that was in my test, that it was like a wheel of them, and they all came back negative. So that was a while ago too,
Yeah.
For me.
I try to stay up on it. My doctor's really good. We actually work with her a lot, and she does our fact and fiction piece here in just a minute. And so she's really good about, kind of keeping me in the short list of people to call and be like, hey, come get tested again. We haven't found it in you. It's there somewhere. All right. So pivoting now to drums and how old were you when you were like, this is it? I really want to get my butt into drumming. I haven't done it yet. I want to do it now.
Well, that was before I even knew about the breast cancer. I was January of 2016. I was 46 years old. I was I'm doing this. I was so excited. I made that first appointment to take my lesson. And then of course things came to a screeching halt. So I actually took my first lesson just on the cusp at 49. So
wow, that's so awesome, man. And it's such an inspiration too, because there's so many women out there that I'm always like, hey, they'll come up and they're like, oh, drumming is so cool. I wish I could play drums. And I'm like, do it and do it now. I mean, why wait, right? I mean, has that been your experience so far? Are you just real happy you're doing it?
I'm so happy I'm doing it. And I have to tell you, the drums have given me so much more than I thought they ever would. They have literally, in taking my lessons and practicing and just having fun, has been my therapy throughout this whole thing. I mean, I never expected to get that call that I'd have to go back to the OR, 2 years later and stop my drum lessons again and take that break. So I was very itchy to get back, and I did in about a 6 to 8 week period of time. But I have really thoroughly embraced them. I've embraced the not so great days and the really great days. It's just been terrific. It really has been. And I'm going to be a student forever. I'm going to be a drum student forever.
Well, and I think that that's the right thing to do. I think I told you the other night that I was thinking, I need to get back into lessons and stuff like that, because you just literally, with any instrument or any skill for that matter, you can't learn everything. I mean, it's just not possible. There's always something new to learn. And especially when it comes to drums, like I was telling you, we were talking last night, guys, and I was like, yeah, when I took drum lessons, I learned rock and I learned a little bit of country, and then I just kind of went on my way and I just ran with that. So I haven't really got to experiment with a lot of different styles of music because I've been just playing in rock bands most of my life. But I really admire what you're doing. You were telling me last night that you're working on a new style of music. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah, it's called soca, and it's almost a calypso style of music. It's very fun, very dancey. I just got the patterns I'm working on yesterday, and that's me. I love all that high energy type music and the dancing around the house type stuff. So I'm really looking forward to trying to get this down within the next week or so I can play it for my teacher.
Well, and speaking of your teacher, Janine, I just looked and it says John Gill is in the house. He says, proud of my drum student, Janine. So your teacher is watching right now, John. Yeah. And I enjoyed the interview John did of you, too. So that was very cool. So, John, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for being here. I want to let you know that Lynn Barnett has said, fascinating story, Janine. You are a warrior. Loves that. And then Dieter says, Janine, truly appreciate you sharing this with us this evening.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
Very cool. And Courtney is asking what your age is. 2 of my sisters were negative for the gene, but now they're curious how proactive they need to be. And I believe you said 49, right?
Actually, I'm 51 right now.
51. Okay, April does bad math. You're welcome. 51. We're actually the same age, man. That's awesome.
Yes.
We're like,
I know. I remember we had this conversation.
Yeah, when we talked last time. Yeah, the Zoom we did. And Louis is signing off. Louis, I love you, man. Thank you for joining from Florida. So cool. And Dieter keeps showing you love. He's so great. And John says hello to me. Hi, John. So good to see you. So I was talking to Deborah. Deborah runs our social media for Instagram. And she told me recently that you have been working through a bucket list. Is that right?
Yes. And drums was the #1 on my bucket list.
That's what she said. And what was funny is when she told me that you had the bucket list, I was like, well, she actually started working on the bucket list prior to breast cancer, right?
That is very true. I started to work on it prior to my breast cancer. And of course, everything came to a halt. But the breast cancer really made me put that list in gear. So once I got through all my stuff, I said, that's it. I'm going for it. So that's when I took my drum lessons. And, I've been going for it ever since. So
I have to ask you, how many items are on this list anyway?
Well, actually, I did accomplish #2. I said, I'm going to buy myself a truck. So I went on and bought myself a truck.
Awesome.
So I got that one done. I have another couple of handfuls on the list that I think are going to be coming down the pike pretty soon, actually.
I think that is such a wonderful idea, man. I've had something on my list every time I talk to anybody about this. I've always wanted a 1978 Trans Am.
Oh, yeah.
I've always wanted, ever since I was very little, I've always wanted one. And I remember I test drove one, probably it's been at least 10 years ago now. And when I recently got married, that was my getaway car. I found a person to loan me their Trans Am as a getaway car, and I just love that car. And maybe you'll inspire me or motivate me to get off my butt to actually go for that, man. I know, dude, totally.
Why not?
Well,
And
girl,
April, that
yeah.
would be so cool with your sticks and your snare and your
I
Trans
know,
Am. I mean,
dude.
come on.
And no, see, I need to get like a black one with like the pink eagle on the front, like
Yes.
all the pink racing stripes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So real quick, we've got just a couple of minutes left.
Sure.
Before you drop off, I wanted to let everybody know about your Instagram channel that you have for for Drumstick. It's really picking up steam over there, and you've got a really amazing guest coming up. So tell everybody about the show that's coming up.
I do. Well, I started over Drumstick during the pandemic when everything came to a screeching halt. And I felt as a student, I needed some support from other students and my teacher and other teachers. So I created this page, this platform and community where drummers of all skills, all ages can come on for a podcast, or I'll showcase their drumming and just support for them. So that's kind of how the whole idea started with that. And week by week in April, you've been on it. I've had podcasts with terrific pros and students, and we have a big one coming up Friday, but I can't reveal it yet. That's the thing.
It's a big secret. Excellent.
That's a secret.
But it's
for
Friday. So do you know what time Friday on your Instagram?
Well, yeah, we're going to record it Friday at 11, and
Gotcha.
then it will be posted in, kind of in phases from like Friday on. So, and I think I'm going to have it up on YouTube as well at O for Drumstick on YouTube. So.
Very cool. I've really enjoyed
Yeah.
following you on that. I get
you.
over there to Instagram every now and then, and every time I go
Yeah.
over there, you are always sharing out some great drum videos. It's so much fun to watch, man.
Been
Really, very, very
so
cool.
inspiring for me, April. I have thoroughly enjoyed this project and have gotten so much support.
Well, girl, you're rocking it, man. All of us
Thank
love
you.
it. I know Deborah loves it. She's checking it out all the
Yeah.
time. So, girl, man, thank you so much for joining
you,
tonight.
April.
It was so amazing to have you. I can't wait to see
Appreciate
what
it.
all you do over there on Instagram, and keep
you.
rocking, and thank you for inspiring me to get on that bucket list and get on
Yes.
some lessons too.
Listen, I'll take a ride in that Trans Am any day.
Hey man, I'll drive it all the way to New York and we'll go somewhere fun,
Yeah.
okay? Take me to show me the
Perfect.
sights, all right?
You got it.
All right, girl, you take care. Thank you so much for joining.
Bye, April.
Love ya.
See
Take
ya.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, that is Janine, man. She's a rock star. We are so happy to have had her tonight.